when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alls, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priest.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priest, and this is Love Conquers Alls. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Donald. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Love Conquers Alls. We're really happy to have you here and excited to have you here today because we have a great topic because that has to do with not just Alzheimer's, but it sort of bleeds into our documentary No Country for Old People, which is out now, and so many people, when it comes to neglect and abuse, want to talk about, well, you know, we have no recourse. What do you do? The law is set up so again, it's stacked against the victims and their families, and it is. I'm not going to lie, it is. And, you know, I don't talk about it a lot, but I did file a suit for my mom. I can't talk about the details, but I can tell you it is and I did it for the reason of that everybody will tell you that's in this industry, memorializing it, getting it on record, because if just that, if you don't, you know, if you're like me and you're not litigious, but just to get it on record is so important. And, you know, and it was stressed to me from our co-producer, Rick Moncastle, who's the former federal prosecutor, who said, Susie, you have to do this. It's because I was like, I'm not litigious. I don't want to do this. And he said, but you have to. It's the right thing to do, is to get them on record, at the very least. So, and, you know, which is something I want to talk about with our guest today, who's actually an elder care attorney. And I just think it's such an important topic. So I'm excited to have him. And I know how hard it was personally, just even procuring an attorney who will take your case, because it is, like Don said, it's stacked up against us. And for all the reasons that we talk about in the documentary and that we've talked about on the show, it is, you know, it is heavily weighted for the industry and the protection of the industry, and not on the most vulnerable and our loved ones and the elderly. So, which is what we're trying to do, educate everybody with No Country for Old People, get them, and so you don't get, you know, I know I say this all the time, but don't get sucker punched like I did, because it's awful to be in crisis and try to make smart decisions. And I made a lot of mistakes. So trying to help mitigate those mistakes with you out there, if you haven't gone through this yet, or if you're going through it now. All this information is, even it's not pretty, and it's not what we want to talk. It's not fun. It's not a sitcom, and it's not any of that stuff. But, you know, it's stuff we need to look at, so that when you're in that situation, it's not devastating. It shouldn't be devastating. It's part of life. It's the circle of life.
It's going to be hard, but yeah. I mean, it's going to be hard no matter what, but it is, as Susie said, it's shockingly devastating when you have no idea what's going on, when you're just walking through this forest of, you know, where am I, and things are jumping out at you and you have no idea how to react to them, on top of just the emotion of what is happening to your loved one. It's a perfect storm of hell.
Yeah,
so
it really
if you can mitigate some of that, it'll make it a lot better. And that's the goal.
Yeah, because I do think that this is a hot topic, and so I'm really glad that we got to have this guest. Normally we kibitz and make things really fun and light, but I'm fired up today, Don. I'm fired up because
I'm going to even say, damn it. See, that's how fired up I am. I just said,
Oh
damn
my
it.
God.
I know.
I'm going to
I'm a
say,
rebel.
son of a bitch. There, I did it.
Oh my
I did it.
God.
I know, son of a bitch. No, I mean, honestly, I'm very fired up about this topic, and I we've been lucky because we've got to work with very closely for the past 3 years our co-producer Rick Montcastle, who's former federal prosecutor, who prosecuted nursing homes for 2 decades, never saw any change. Retired 3 years ago, and I met him and said, let's do a documentary on this because things need to change. And boy, they really do. And but until everything changes, we need to take our power, whatever it is, and whatever we can do to hold everybody accountable. That's what we should do. That's the right thing to do. It is. And because I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this. I wanted to do the documentary because I knew I knew the terrain, but legal. I'm not a litigious person, and I didn't want to venture into that. It just seemed very daunting, and it can be. But honestly, it wasn't as daunting as I thought it was going to be, because it feels like the people that are the attorneys and their firms that are in this particular specialty of law have so much empathy. They have to, because of the way it's set up, and because they do it everything on spec and pro bono. They have to take cases that are very strong, but they wouldn't go into this field if they didn't have empathy, because it is not fun.
And it's a roll of the dice for them, complete roll
Yeah.
of the dice. It's not like, it's not like a slip and fall and, okay, we know we can go in there and say this and we get this. It's not. It's so complicated. And,
It's very complicated.
Yeah. So.
And that's why we have our guest today, Don. Yeah.
We do.
Do you want to do a fantastic, wonderful introduction like you always do, Donald?
Why not? Why wouldn't I want to do that? So I'll do that right now. Anthony Lanzone is the founding partner of Lanzone Morgan LLP, a firm built on courage, compassion, and justice. Earning his Juris Doctor from Western State College of Law, Anthony went on to complete advanced training in dispute resolution at Pepperdine University's renowned Strauss Institute. He's an active member of the Consumer Attorneys of California and the American Association for Justice. Driven by a lifelong passion to stand up for injustice, Anthony has dedicated his career to advocating for the rights and dignity of vulnerable individuals in nursing home and elder abuse cases, and holding powerful institutions accountable. We are honored that he is joining us today, so let's say hello to Anthony Lanzone.
Hello, how are you today?
We're good, Anthony. You are one of those amazing people that is representing vulnerable people, elderly people, and vulnerable, not just elderly, who have bad experiences, egregious experiences in long-term care, which is what our documentary, No Country for Old People, is about, because I've been through it. I've also been through the legal journey in this arena, and it isn't easy. And so we're really excited to talk to you about this. So I just want to know a little bit about your background. Tell the audience what your background is and how you came to this focus on the elderly and the vulnerable in long-term care.
Yeah. So I went to law school because I knew I wanted to represent victims. I knew I wanted to represent vulnerable people that have difficulty finding representation. And when I went to law school, I was fortunate to work during the day and go to school at night. And I worked at a firm that did a lot of different plaintiffs' work, representing victims of all different types of cases. And somehow I discovered elder abuse neglect. At the time, it wasn't something that a whole lot of people were aware of, that there's this whole body of law in California that tries to protect elderly folks. And I was back in 2001, when I discovered all that stuff, and I was fortunate enough to get my hands on a couple cases and just kind of really enjoyed the area of law, because I felt like I was representing the most vulnerable people in California at the time. And I've been doing it since 2001, and we continue to do it today. And, my law firm's been fortunate enough to be part of some really seminal cases in California that I think have really made a positive impact for elderly folks.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I mean, these kinds of cases are classically known to be so challenging, right? I mean, there's so many barriers put in front of the consumer and the family members to protect their loved ones, and what makes it so challenging? Like, why is it so hella challenging? Why is it so hard to take these people to task when they do something so horribly?
That's a good question. Part of it is just the law itself. For example, if you get in a car accident, somebody made a mistake. They weren't intentionally trying to do something. You get an offender bender, and the law is written in a way where you're not going to punish people for mistakes that they make. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's human. In elder abuse neglect cases, you're actually alleging that you didn't just make a mistake. You were consciously disregarding an expected outcome, where if you don't take care of an elderly person, make sure they get food, make sure they get water, make sure they get turned and repositioned, just the basic custodial care needs that we all take for granted because we're capable of doing those things ourselves. That's what makes it difficult, because the law has a higher burden of proof, and you have a lot more hurdles to overcome. In addition to that, when you accuse somebody of those types of things, you can imagine they're going to fight like hell. And so when you sue, we primarily do, I call institutional neglect cases, a lot of long-term care type of facilities. And so they're well financed, and they're going to find the best lawyers they can, and they're going to fight like hell. And that's what makes these types of cases really, really difficult.
And don't the laws, especially here in California, really, make it more difficult not for a consumer to even find a lawyer to take a case, because there's the limits. They have such low limits that a lawyer who's going to be working on a 30% or 40% or whatever, what are they going to be doing? They'll look at a case and go, well, I have all these burdens of proof, and I don't know if it's going to be worth it for my firm to even take this case because the limits are so low. And I know that varies from state to state, but is that a challenge not only for you as a lawyer, but for the consumer to find a lawyer who will take a case?
It's a huge challenge. But for people like me, most of our clients, if not all of them, would not have access to the courts. So we have to take these cases on a contingency basis. Otherwise, the plaintiff won't be able to do them. And you're right, Don. A lot of lawyers aren't willing to do that. These cases are really expensive to litigate, and I'm not talking about attorney's fees. I'm talking about depositions, filing fees, discovery is just crazy.
Expert witnesses, and all that stuff.
All that stuff. It's not uncommon to spend $200,000, $300,000 on a case, and you got to win. Otherwise, you don't even get that back, let alone get paid for your time, let alone compensate the clients. And so you're right. To find a lawyer to do these types of cases is really, really difficult for the consumer. And more importantly, is over the years, elder abuse has become a very, I guess it's a lot more popular because a lot of people have a lot more awareness. There's a lot more advertising these days. Plaintiffs' lawyers are going crazy with the advertising.
Yeah.
And so a lot of lawyers say, hey, I'm going to get into elder abuse. It looks like a great way to make a living, not realizing, oh my God, what did I get myself into? This is way over the top. And so it's tough for the consumer, because not only do you have to find a lawyer, you have to find one that knows the lay of the land, that can actually hold the wrongdoers accountable. So it's really tricky for the consumer these days. And then you've got all these layers that the nursing homes put in front of the consumer, arbitration agreements, contracts that are 100 pages long where they don't even realize that they're giving up rights. Another point that I'd like to make is a lot of the cases that I deal with, they all stem from the fact that the first time anybody has a run-in with a nursing home, some tragic event happened, right? Susie knows what I'm talking about. She experienced it with her mom, but no one's thinking about, oh my gosh, mom's going to get Alzheimer's, mom's going to have to go to a nursing home. And all these traumatic life events are happening and unfolding, and you're in an acute care hospital and some nurse comes up to you and says, we're discharging your mom in 12 hours, you need to find a nursing home for him. So
That's right.
All these traumatic things are going on as you're making these enormous decisions and entrusting somebody you don't know with your loved one. And so that puts the consumer at a disadvantage again.
It's an unbalanced advantage that they have over us because we're in a crisis, and that's the worst time to make decisions. And we are desperate for answers, and they aren't there. And the ones that are there are generally, if you're in a bad place, it's bad all around. Like it's spoiled all around. So the information you're getting is not correct, even though you know in your gut that it is, right? Like you're saying something is not right here. This is not the way you treat human beings. This can't be right. But they're saying, no, this is the way it is. This is the way it is. And, this is just the way it is. And you have to accept it.
And if you don't like it, you can take them elsewhere.
That's true. And a lot of it's driven to, that's a great point. The way it is, right? You go to an acute care hospital, they say you need to go to a nursing home, you need rehab. Well, a nursing home is not rehab.
No.
A nursing home is 23 hours of convalescing, and if you're lucky, maybe an hour of rehab. So,
if you're lucky. Yes.
Yeah, so like the health insurance is set up to pay the benefit of a rehab. It's all part of a system, a healthcare system that's really broken. I think we all know that, but the consumer doesn't. They're not aware of these things before. It's always, here's the traumatic event, you're in the system, and that's the end of it. And so that really subjects these folks to all the problems that you see and that you guys talk about and that you bring to the open for the public to know. I think it's a great service you guys are.
Well, thank you. I would like to maybe jump to, because we do talk about the systemic crisis. We talk about it ad nauseum. It's in our documentary. We know, I think my audience knows how we get here, but how, and I can talk about my experience with an attorney. And the reason why I did it, just so you know, Anthony, is that our other co-producer is a former federal prosecutor, Rick Montcastle, who prosecuted nursing homes for, federally for over 2 decades and never saw any change. And he also, he had very famous cases against pharmaceutical, which is not much different. And, we also have, as you know, a very powerful nursing home lobby that makes it difficult and has created a very huge barrier for the public, because in a way we're really not the consumer. The government is, when you're on Medicare and Medicaid. So they're answering to them and not to us. And that's why they can say, we'll just find another place if you're not happy, because they'll find someone else and they'll get paid. But so how does somebody in California, and hope, and some of this will apply obviously across the country. It is state by state, but we're very close with CANNER, which is the California Attorneys for
Great group.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're the ones that found me the lawyer that I had, and the reason why I did. I was digressing. The reason why I filed a case, which I can't talk about because we ended up settling, but Rick said, if you don't file a case, then it goes unknown. You need to get it memorialized. At least do that. and I wasn't doing it for money or anything. I was doing it to do what Rick said. I've never filed a lawsuit ever. So I did. And like Dawn said, I was turned down by 4 lawyers here in Los Angeles. And the 4th one said, I'll give you a gift. I'm going to tell you why we can't, most of these people won't do it. It's because the place that your mom was at is beloved. No one's going to touch it. And somehow I found Canner. And Canner, I let them know, I sent him my case, wrote it up, and they said, we'll find you somebody. We've got you somebody. And I said, how? Everyone's turned me down. They said, who? And I gave them the names, and they said, well, they're not on our list. They can't be that good.
Yeah.
But what is the process? What would you recommend to someone who says, I know that my father was died prematurely, as a result of bad care at this said facility. What do you recommend? And a lot of people are so burnt out they don't even want to deal with it. They're just like, ugh, it's over. Let me get away from this awful world. What do you recommend?
Well, when I stumble across somebody that you just described, I always tell them that if you don't do something, you're going to be thinking about it the rest of your life. I should have done this. I should have done that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't hurt to look into it. Does your case rise to the level of something that's actionable? You don't know until you look into it. And so mm-hmm. I always tell people when I talk to them about exactly what you're saying is just give me the burden to look into it and don't worry about it. Let us analyze the case. Let's figure it out. And if there's, a way to hold people to account through the law, then we can do that. And so that's what I tell everybody. And you're right, Susie, that, when you talk about elder abuse and healthcare and Alzheimer's, all this stuff in the big, I'm at the end of the spectrum of that. I don't have any expertise on what the best things are for people with dementia and elderly. I'm at the very, very end of that. So by the time people get to me, the only thing I can do is file a lawsuit. But here's the thing, if you don't do that, if you have a viable case and you don't do that, then you're not holding people to account. Exactly. And by not holding people to account, you're encouraging the conduct to continue. Exactly. And so is it perfect? Is it going to change what happened? No. Does one case change the world? No. But cumulatively, it has to. And I've seen changes in the industry over 20 plus years. And, just making them more aware, I think, has been a positive thing. And people have a lot of good outcomes in long-term care. A lot of people do. The problem is when you have people who are really sick that need more than rehab, and they continue to decline. I just don't think a lot of the facilities are set up. Their algorithm in terms of caring for folks, it just doesn't work for people like that. And I think that's where the major change needs to be. And I don't know how that is because I'm not a practitioner in terms of medicine and things like that. I don't operate the nursing homes. But I can tell you when there's a problem, when something should have happened that didn't happen. That
exactly. And I think that once they get to you, and yet you're right, you are the last stop. You are the buck stops with you because you get all the awful hellish things that you're like you get to see the results of bad conduct of the egregious behavior, egregious businesses that are not doing what they've promised to do. So that's what you get. That's what your expertise is, and it's an expertise, like you said, that we need because we need to hold them accountable. Because if all of us, even if we're burnt out and just done, and we are so sad and so grievous, we want to. It's something. It's not why I did my documentary. I felt if I didn't share what I knew, then I'm culpable. I'm allowing it to go under the radar again and again and again. So that's why I did the documentary, because I thought I have to share what I've learned. And so if people go to someone like you and your firm, and maybe you can't do a trial, maybe there's not enough to do it, but at least you can file a complaint. At least you, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, my goal at the end of the day is to give people peace of mind.
Yes.
So let me look at the case. Should we make a complaint to the Department of Public Health? Should we make a complaint to the medical board? Should we file a civil lawsuit? There's not enough evidence to file a lawsuit. There's not enough evidence to file the complaint. At least the person gets peace of mind. Is really.
I love that.
I mean, like at the end of the day, that's the service that we provide as lawyers in general. You know, you want to give your clients at least that. You know, and if there's something to be done about it and hold people to account, then we have the ability to do that.
I have a personal question for you. You know, having been an active advocate for this since I've started 3 years ago, and I received so many emails and letters and people telling me their stories, and they're so heartbreaking, all of them, right? And they resonate deeply, and you seem like such an empathetic human being. Obviously, you know, this is not the kind of law that you go into to become, you know, a bazillionaire, I don't think. I mean, I'm sure you do very well, but I'm just saying this is very difficult, what you do. And you're also dealing with people every single time that have such a horrible, bad ending. And how does that affect you? Because for me, it's a lot, and I encourage it. Like, I want to hear people's stories, but for you, how do you handle that?
Well, there's enough pain and grief going around the case as it is. Like, I don't need to be, you know, get involved in that. That's not why they're there. They're actually hiring us to try to help with the pain and grief. And so I always tell my clients, like, you know, number one, it's not lost on me how odd this is that you're entrusting this personal matter with a stranger that you don't know. And number two, whatever that burden that you're carrying, you know, the guilt, the uncertainty, the worry, just take that off your back and just put it on our shoulders and let us deal with it, and let us counsel you and see what we can do to try to rectify the wrong. And that seems to give people a good sense of relief. And, you know, it's not lost on me how horrible these situations are. And I think you're right, Susie, like, you got to kind of have, like, even when we hire people, like, we don't just hire anybody. Like, you really have to have that empathy for people. Because if you don't, you're not going to be very successful in this type of case. It's just there's too much emotion and grief. And I think that really helps us, and my whole team, really, we all have it. And I think that makes a big difference for the cases and the clients. We get a lot of, I mean, some of the great, like, it's rare for a lawyer to get a thank you from a client. And some of the thank you cards we've gotten, and just people come up by, it's been very rewarding for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. So if you, I mean, obviously we're not going to get into the weeds of how a case could move forward, but is it safe to say that so many of these cases settle before you get into court? Because I know a lot of people say it's not about the money, like me. I just want justice to be done. I want it to be exposed. I want people to know what happened. I want to have my day in court. But it's hard to get your day in court because most of these organizations, these facilities, these institutions are backed, like you said, by a lot of finance. They have insurance companies, and they do whatever they can to stay out of court. Is that correct?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I will say yes, the vast majority of cases settle. And the primary reason why they do is, generally speaking, In every case, there's always facts that support your position, and there's always facts that don't support your position. There's a lot of factors that go into it, the jurisdiction that you're in, the judge that you have. There's so much risk in trial and uncertainty in trial for both sides that, it's risky. And so that's why a lot of cases settle. And I do think the judicial system is set up for that, because most people think that a trial is the end of the case. The trial is like the middle of a case. The trial will go on, and this dispute's going to go on and on and on until the parties take matters into their own hands and resolve a case. I tried a case back in, how long it was, 2010, or it was like 12 years ago. And we got a verdict on part of the case, and then the rest of the case was dismissed, and we had to go through 2 separate appellate courts, the Supreme Court of California, and 12 years later they were going to let us try the second part of the case, and then finally the case resolved after 12 years. And when you have a family going through grief and all this, I mean, you want to drag that out for 12 years? You probably don't want to do that. But we do try cases. A lot of cases do get tried. We got a verdict a couple months ago, a verdict last year. There's probably 2 or 3 cases that get tried in our law firm a year. And, it's risky business for victims.
And can you talk?
So,
go on.
Oh, no, I was going to just say, because, and it's touching about something I said before, is that especially in California, the limits, the fact that, that they basically, there's so little penalty relative to winning a case to that, because their insurance is just going to pay for it. It's their cost of business. It's in their line items in their budgets. It's not that big a deal for them because the limits are so low. How can somebody do a slip and fall and get $10 million if somebody who dies of wrongful death or abuse, it's capped, I think, in California at like $1 million or $750,000.
No, it's 500,000.
Yeah, it's so low, and I assume that that's because the nursing home lobby is so powerful that it keeps those limits low. How does that make any sense? And are we ever going to see that change? Because to me, it makes no sense.
Well, there are caps on certain types of cases when it relates to elder abuse and neglect. It all stems around a healthcare provider. So if you sue a healthcare provider for negligence, they're entitled to those cap protections. In California, several years ago, there was an agreement made that got passed in the legislature where those caps are increasing incrementally over a 10-year period. So that's been positive for the consumer. And that also gives more attorneys the opportunity to make it more palatable to take on these types of cases. So that's been positive. But it's not as easy as, the insurance is going to pay for it, it's not going to make a difference. A lot of these large corporations are self-insured now, and they operate on credit lines. And, there's been verdicts, and these verdicts really, really have an impact on their business. And so, yes, a lot of the cases get settled, but I think a lot of the trial work that gets done, those are important because it sets the tone for the entire industry, and it also pushes people to settle, especially the defendants. They don't want to be victimized by a $10 million, even if there's caps, they could be exposed to punitives, and they're exposed to attorneys' fees and costs, potentially. And so we're still talking millions and millions of dollars of exposure per case. And so, again, they settle because of, there's facts that are good for one side, and there's facts that are good for the other side. The uncertainty of the juries, you just don't know. For example, I always, if you if your case was, I represent the plaintiff and I want to convince the jury that baseball is the best sport in the world. If I had 12 people on the jury that played baseball, I'd probably do pretty well on that case. But if I had 12 people that never been to a baseball game, I probably wouldn't do very well in that case. And that's a kind of a stripped down version of how risky jury trials are.
Can you tell the difference, because this was something that, Don just brought it up about the difference between punitive damages and then the cap of just, what does the cap relate to in terms of what does that cap relate to in terms of the
Is it wrongful death? Is it just neglect and abuse? Yeah, what is the...
And then what are punitive
the
damages? So we know the difference, and how are they assessed? And I know that one of the issues is that the value of someone's life is based on how much income and how valuable they are to society. So when you have someone that doesn't have an income, so there's no income to lose when you're on Medicaid, right? And so that is factored into it, correct?
Yeah, so if somebody passes away, and if they make $30,000 a year and they're 30 years old, that lost future income is something that's recoverable as damages because they died. Obviously, the vast majority of our cases, they're retired, they don't work, and they passed away. So there's really not that lost wage element that you're talking about. Again, the caps are only applicable to cases of negligence against healthcare providers. Skilled nursing facilities are healthcare providers. So you have that element where if you just prove negligence, the caps apply. If you prove elder abuse and neglect, certain claims aren't capped and other claims are. So it's kind of complex to get into.
It is complex. I know you have a hard out in 6 minutes, and I just wanted you to talk about something that.
Minutes.
Can you?
Okay.
Okay, good. Because there's something else that I just learned by going through this case that is a bee in my bonnet, because it's about the CMS. So if you settle your case or you go to trial, whatever, CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, come in and go, oh, thank you for going to court and revealing all this fraud. Now we get to have our percentage. And to me, that's like, we are the wolf in sheep's clothing. We didn't do any oversight. We didn't enforce our regulations that are there. And yet, thank you, we wouldn't have looked at it at all, but you brought it to light. Give us some money. And they take money
and it comes out of your pocket, not out of the facility that caused all of this. It doesn't come out of them in addition to the settlement. It comes out of your settlement.
And with all due respect, Anthony, it doesn't come out of the cut of the lawyer either. It comes out of the plaintiff's cut, correct?
Correct. So don't let me forget to address your question about the punitive damages, because I didn't get to that.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Right, sorry.
No. But
you can put that on hold.
Well,
Okay.
However strongly you feel about this, Susie, I think we'll feel about the same about this.
Okay.
Generally speaking, in an elder abuse and neglect case, Medicare by statute has an automatic lien. They're saying, okay, well, somebody has a bed sore, they weren't supposed to get that, and we had to expend a bunch of money to help, cure that ailment that we wouldn't have had to spend that money but for the negligence or neglect of the defendant. So we have somebody designated in our office that we have to pay a salary, employment taxes, benefits, and everything to make sure that the federal government gets their money back. And they are painfully difficult to deal with. And the system that's in place to make sure they get paid is a disaster. They'll tell you, hey, we spent $700,000 on this. And then 6 months later, they'll say, well, we made a mistake. It was really $100,000. And so whatever you have to repay Medicare or CMS, that's part of the damage calculation. So if we were to go to trial on a case, we would have a witness come in and say, I got this letter from Medicare, and they're claiming that we owe them $250,000 or whatever it is, and then the jury would be able to determine that as a damage so that it hopefully wouldn't come out of their the compensation that they're for their injury, and that would be something that would be separate. But when we're talking about settling the cases, which the majority of the ones we do, that is calculated as part of the deal, so that the plaintiff knows, they're going to have to pay this too, in addition to whatever compensation for the plaintiff is going to be. But it is an imperfect system. It's unfair, in my opinion, because when Medicare was created and legislated and operated, it was never contemplated that that would have to be something that would have to be paid back. But that's the way it is now, and I wish it was helping Medicare and CMS with their finances, but it doesn't seem to be doing very much. So it seems pretty unfair to me too.
And the fact that it's negotiable, it's negotiable. So it's like, wait, it either is a cost or it isn't the cost. What
right,
is,
but they negotiate
it seems so like random.
It just seems nefarious at best, and the fact that that they can come in and like you said and negotiate on it, it just kind of like taints the whole concept of it, and why they should be penalized. If anything, it should be the opposite. Like we should get. The plaintiff should get a settlement from the perpetrator. I'm not a lawyer, and then also from CMS for not doing their job. But no, we're rewarding them for not doing their job.
Yeah, it's that gut feeling that you're talking about. I have it right now because we're talking about it. It just makes me sick to my stomach.
It's awful.
And then at the very least, I mean, if a victim of elder abuse and neglect wants to hold someone to account, they have to do all the legwork and go to court and find a lawyer and take all the risk and do all this stuff. I don't see why Medicare can't have their lawyer go into court when there's an elder abuse case if they want to stake a claim to a lien and litigate their own case and present their own case.
Thank you. Exactly.
You know why? Because there's so many that there are not enough lawyers to be hired by CMS. There'd be so many cases, it would be, they'd need an army of 1 million lawyers.
No, there's the same lawyers. No, I think they would just have to go. No, they should be punished for it, and then and if they have to go, let them find a lawyer just like anybody else does. A claimant does. It's on them. It's incumbent on them to take care of their own business, not on somebody's family who's already gone through tragedy and now has to it's like pouring salt in the wound. If you ask me,
I don't disagree.
Right,
with that.
Anthony? Okay, so before you have to go, I want you to explain what punitive damages is, and then we have to have you back on again for part 2 because there's just too much to talk about.
I'd love to do that.
Okay.
So punitive damages, those are damages that come at the very end of the trial. And if you prove in your case in chief that the acts of the defendants were fraudulent, malicious, or oppressive, the jury can decide if they say yes, that conduct was, then you have the opportunity to put your punitive damage case on. And all punitive damages they're very simple. How much money is it going to cost to punish this particular defendant for the conduct? And again, the hope is to put such a damage on them that it'll really motivate them to change their conduct. And so all the punitive damages are based on is essentially you get to put your case on, this is their net worth, this is all their income, these are all their assets, this is all their debt, and then the jury can decide, if somebody has $1 million, is it going to cost $1,000 to punish this person? If somebody has $1 billion, is it going to cost $1 million?
$1 million, yeah.
And the jury gets to determine that.
But Anthony, how is there not any? How is it not? Why is there just naturally just punitive damages? Because how is it not done it without not malicious?
Yeah, if there's neglect and abuse, how is that not automatically punitive?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Well, the law is written in a way to be balanced and for it to be fair. And so just because we accuse somebody of abuse and neglect, they have the opportunity to defend themselves. And so I agree with you. If you go to trial and you prove elder abuse and neglect, most of the time, you're going to go to the punitive damage phase, and the jury's going to get to decide how much to punish those folks.
Okay.
But as we said, most of the cases resolve, and so you factor in based on trials that have happened, based on other cases, and you evaluate those risks and benefits. I tell you again, to exemplify the riskiness of jury trials and punitive damage and all that stuff. When I was a young lawyer getting a lot of opportunities to try cases, I won my first case, big punitive damage verdict, won my second case, punitive damage verdict, and I got an ego about it. And it's very easy to fall into that trap. Just the feeling of being able to convince somebody of malice, oppression, fraud, and they intentionally hurt this person and all that stuff, and plus the rewards you get from representing the vulnerable person. Then I had a few cases that I went to trial on and I lost. And I reflected back on that thinking, I wasn't thinking straight. I was riding the ego train. I felt like I could do anything. I could convince anybody of anything. And I was a little irrational about examining and weighing the evidence and the risks and the benefits. And I felt bad. I think I drove some of those clients to trial when probably their best interest was not to relive that and probably to resolve the case. And so it's just risky business all the way around. It's the best system I know of, and I'm happy with it. And I think it I wish we did more on the front end of elder care and all this stuff. So we didn't have so much to do, and we didn't have to be talking about jury trials and all that stuff. I don't know what the solutions are over there, but I know that there's some solutions to be had. And so, I don't know. This is where we're at, and all
this is where we're at. I know, and you're right about these. When you go to trial, they can last so long. And we interviewed a registered nurse that we shielded in our documentary because she was a whistleblower who went through a 12-year trial that was so harrowing and so awful that by the time it got to the end, and by the way, there was like a $300 million judgment against this, franchise, and they just basically made a deal with the judge and got it down to like a couple million, and then filed for bankruptcy and then opened with under another corporate, entity. So those things happened, and she was.
That's a whole nother session. For sure.
Yeah. So there is that stuff. But wow, right. We need a whole nother session with you. So we have to thank you so much. I know you have to go, and we had a little bit of a late technical start. So come, everybody who's listening, come back. We're going to have a part 2, and maybe we'll get some questions. If you have questions, send them to us. You have all our stuff in the show notes, and we'll also have all of Anthony, his firm, and ways to contact him. And I think you gave such great advice. Like, let you decide. Like, give your case. Don't feel defeated. At least give your case a chance, so that you know that you've done all that you can. Because this is an emotional part of law. It's very emotional. And I think it's beautiful that you said you want to at least mitigate some of that guilt, some of that feeling that you could have or should have or would have, done something, right?
Yeah. Yes, I apologize for whatever part I played in the technical difficulties.
No worries. It happens. It happens.
We find you innocent. Yeah, okay. We find you innocent of that.
Here comes CMS.
Because there's so much to. I would love to come back if you guys want me to. There's so much.
Absolutely.
To talk about in this area. But thank you for all the work you guys are doing. I love that you're getting the word out there, because awareness has a positive impact, and hopefully people can be prepared for nursing homes and long-term care and Alzheimer's and all that stuff a lot better than they were before you guys were out there. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and thank you for everything you're doing, because you're doing such an amazing.
You're making a difference. So.
Yeah. So thank you very, very much.
Appreciate that, guys. Thanks so much for having me on.
Okay. Take care.
All right.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.